Hey, this is Robert here at Guzzi Fabrication, and we're continuing on with the 63 Impala SS convertible restoration. Now this is part 7. If you'll remember, we had removed the frame. What we're going to do is disassemble, repair the collision damage, and there was a little bit of rust damage on this frame. Then we're going to ship that out to Media Blast, get it powder coated, and then we're going to get this thing reassembled. Move on to the next step. Okay, last time we're going to see it in that condition. And here is the frame back from Media Blasting. Now they've applied a low sheen or semi-gloss black finish on this. And it looks like it turned out pretty decent. Hey, and throughout this assembly process, I'm going to be sharing with you some tips and tricks on assembly. Okay, and here's the first tip. Now these little threaded mounts, those are the lower control arm shaft where the bolt goes through the frame, and it makes life a lot easier if you have those in place. So first tip, don't lose those. Okay, I'll show you where they go. Those are the holes that are on the outside. Now that little guy goes on the inside. Otherwise, you have to get a wrench up in there and put a nut on it. Yeah, those make it easier. Okay, here's all of our parts that we're going to be installing laid out. And we're starting with good quality Moog replacement parts. No China there. Yeah, when you lay them out on the table, that's a lot of parts for the suspension. And we took our time and refinished everything really nicely inside and out. Steering gear box refinished. A little bit of a contrast in cast color. Okay, in this piece, a little bit of time was taken and it was nicely refinished also. Some nice contrast. Okay, we don't want to use those old caps. We want to do the best job that we can do. And it's always in the little details. And here's the spindle with the backing plate mounted. You'll notice we did a flat, cleaned up the spindles, then I did a flat black inside, semi-gloss outside. And here's another tip for you. Okay, if you're replacing the bushings on your Impala, there is a hard top and a convertible replacement bushing kit. Don't buy the hard top if you have a convertible. There are more bushings on the convertible. Otherwise, you'd be buying two kits. And there those guys are. And we're going to go ahead and set those in place. And this is going to be another little tip that I do. I don't glue the mount into place because it needs to be able to move in the opening. But what I do recommend is a little bit of black weather strip adhesive on the washer. That keeps that thing from moving around when you're mounting the body, from slipping off. One important thing you want to do, make sure that it is centered before it dries. And always put that glue back in the box. Otherwise, it's going to get a hole in it one way or another. And here's something else you want to keep in mind whenever you have things powder coated. Okay, we want the outside powder coated, but oftentimes they'll do the powder coat will extend into parts that we don't want powder coated. Now the bushings have to be pressed in here. If there's powder coat, they won't press in. You'll have a lot of trouble. So we're just going to touch that up. We don't want to take off a lot of material, just enough to get that bushing in there. Here's another consideration to keep in mind. Okay, this is the lower control arm shaft. You'll notice that it is directional. It can be put in upside down. Don't want to do that. And then I always like to lay out the A-arms and then orient the cross shafts in them. There is a front and a back. Some of them have an up and a down. If we lay them out like that, it makes life a lot easier. Okay, back to the powder coating. Okay, you'll notice that they didn't get any powder coat in that opening or that hole. So what we want to do is come back, put a little bit of fingernail polish or whatever type of paint you choose in there. Otherwise, rust is going to take off in there. It's going to bleed out. It's going to make everything look really, really not professional. Now, these are specific bolts. I tried to upgrade all of the bolts and replace all of the bolts for the suspension, but these are specific. So we had to retain those. And back to the cross shafts. Long end, short end. Short end goes to the back, long goes to the front. This is the upper control arm shaft. Now I like to build the upper control arm on the vehicle. It's just easier. That way you don't put it in a vise, mar it up. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, we take a little bit of grease, coat the shafts. Now this is where the bushings are going to install. And we're getting ready to install the bushings. Okay, we coat a little bit of grease inside the bushing as well as the outside. And we'll do that to both of the bushings. Okay, just carefully slide that upper control arm into place. Set the bushings. And now another tip. This is a good time to not forget to put the rubber snubber in place. Because after it's assembled, yeah, you can't put it in place. So let's do that right now. Bump stop. Whatever part of the country you're from, you can call it whatever you want. Okay, we're going to get these bushings installed the easy way. Okay, we'll tighten that down. Now you can see the little bit of deformation there. Now that's what we want. That's perfectly fine. We want some pressure on that bushing control arm, because now a gentle tap, boom, there it is. And we want to check it. make sure there's no binding. Now we can install the ball joint. Get that set into place. We don't want to forget our seal. And we're putting in that threaded mount, installing the lower control arms. Okay, lower ball joint. We don't want to use an impact on that. We want to use a wrench. Okay, here's the fun part. Yeah, I really dislike handling compressed springs. Okay, but we've got that licked. And we always want to use a wrench, not an impact or anything like that, tightening up the ball joints. And now we're going to get ready for hub installation. Now I've already packed the bearings and installed the grease seal and the bearings inside the hub. I'm going to get that seated. And we don't want to over tighten the wheel hub. I want to check it, make sure it spins freely. Cotter pin. We don't want to forget any of the cotter pins. And this is another trick or tip. An oversized socket works really well for not damaging the dust cap. Now, I don't really know what the owner wants to do, if he's going to go disc brakes or whatever. Not going to invest the time in putting in front brakes till I know. Get the front shock slid into place and secured. Yeah, again, I don't like to use impacts on a lot of things. Some things are okay. Most of the time I like to use a wrench so they don't get over tightened. Okay, we're going to assemble the inner and outer tie rods. And I came to find out later that they sent the wrong pieces in the suspension rebuild kit, so I'm going to have to order those. They're not going to get installed on this video. Sway bar. Okay, the frame bushings are installed. Now I'm installing the end links. And we want to make sure we don't over tighten those. Okay, gearbox installation. And you get that set into place. Yeah, the cast is a really nice contrast, along with the yellow zinc hardware and the black semi-gloss black frame. And there's where I found out that that's the incorrect piece there. So we've got those on order. We'll deal with that later. Okay, rear suspension. Now I did retain the original hardware. I refinished the original hardware for the rear because they're really specific. Had a hard time locating the correct replacement bolts. Now here is a tip on compressing the rear spring so you can install the shocks and then that cross shaft. This way it won't damage it. Now you cannot use this method on the front springs. Don't even try. And this is something worth investing in. One of the best tools I've ever bought. Grease guns are stupidly messy. This is the cleanest, easiest way to grease whatever needs to be greased. No more mess. And there it is. And we will go back and double check everything, double check all of the bolts, make sure they're tight, make sure all the cotter pins are installed, make sure everything is greased. And like I mentioned, we'll get those inner and outer tie rods installed when the correct pieces come in. Everything's looking really nice. Really happy. Got to get to work on the body, get that refinished. Stay tuned for part 8. Thanks to all our subscribers, supporters, and followers. We're at almost 7,000 subscribers. Really happy about that. Thank you guys for making that possible. Yeah, pretty happy with that. We'll see you in the next video. As always, thanks for watching.